أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، حمدا كثيرا طيبا طاهرا مباركا فيه، وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا، وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان، واجعلنا من عبادك الراشدين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه، وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا، وزدنا من لدنك علما نافعا يا أرحم الراحمين. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and peace and blessings be upon His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We are still going with the khilafah of the great Sahabi Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, and still speaking about the major events and the construction and how Umar radiyallahu anhu built and established his khilafah after the death of the successor of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. And you have mentioned and we have talked about many different aspects throughout the khilafah of Umar radiyallahu anhu, and there's many more things to talk about, and the person can talk on just regarding the khilafah of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, for it is a history that is there are many different avenues and many different ways to speak about his khilafah, because the khilafah of Umar radiyallahu anhu was one of the greatest khilafah that lived throughout the history of Islam. And that which he established for the Muslimin in his khilafah, everyone that came after him benefited from the establishments that Umar radiyallahu anhu he had laid. People think, unfortunately, sometimes that the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, because they lived in an era that was a very early era when it came to civilization, when it came to construction, when it came to infrastructures, when it came to all of these things. But wallahi, when you read the history of Islam and you read the history of the Khulafa al-Rashideen, you come to see how advanced they were and how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He gave them the knowledge of not only to establish the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth, but also because with the establishment of the deen, there has to be civilization, there has to be culture, there has to be construction. You can't just build the religion, you have to also build the surroundings to support the religion and to have a base for the Islam, for the religion to prosper from and to move forward from. And this is what Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, as we mentioned last week, during the khilafah of Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, towards the end of his khilafah, there was over 1,000 masjid that was built. Over 1,000 masjid that was built in the Islamic lands that Umar radiyallahu anhu, that were opened during the time of Umar. And we mentioned last week the structure that Umar had set with regards to the knowledge and with regards to the scholars of Islam, and how he radiyallahu anhu, he handpicked those who would go out and who would call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who would teach. He didn't just send out anyone, no, he handpicked them. And he handpicked the Sahaba that would go, and they would be the scholars and the knowledge bearers that will spread the knowledge of Islam. Because the knowledge of Islam is something that is pure, and it needs people of knowledge to be able to spread it in the proper way, and to be able to spread and to give da'wah and to call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the proper way. The lesson tonight is how Umar radiyallahu anhu built the infrastructure of the khilafah at his time. One very important thing to understand, when we spoke about the khilafah of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, towards the end of his khilafah, the openings began. He established security, stability in Jazirat al-Arab, in the Arabian Peninsula, in Mecca, in Medina, in the areas around. He focused there, and when he was able to make the area around him stable, straight away the armies were sent out. And the first area that Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu he focused on was Al-Iraq. Because Al-Iraq, geographically, if you look at Al-Iraq in history, which is now known as Iraq, and back then was known also as Al-Iraq, it was positioned between the kingdom of Persia and positioned between the Byzantines and the Romans that were settled in Asham, that were settled in Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, in those areas. Al-Iraq was positioned in between them. Yani this was the land, or this was the area in which there was tug of war between the Persians and between the Romans. They take over, we take over, they fight, we fight. It was an area that wasn't established for anyone at yet. At the time of Abu Bakr, in Iraq, there was the presence of the Persians. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and we mentioned how the strategy that he had, how an army was sent from the south corner of the Arabian Peninsula, another army was sent from the other side, a destination was made for them to reach, to meet up with. Whoever got there first would be the Amir, and of course Khalid ibn Walid radiallahu anhu, he got there first, and he was mentioned the Amir, and the land of Iraq was opened in such a way and so quickly that this has only been done with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and by the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the lands of Iraq was opened. But the purpose of Islam and the purpose of opening these lands in Islam is not just to open lands and then neglect it. It's not just to open and free these lands and to leave it. Like the colonizing people do today. They go into a land, they destroy the people, they kill the people, they take their bounties, they take what they want and then they leave it. Or if they don't have a place to settle themselves, they overtake or they settle in that place, in that position itself. And they kick out the people and they make the people who were there to become strangers. In Islam, that's not the purpose of opening the lands. The purpose of opening the lands is to spread the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is to spread the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where, at the time of Abu Bakr, it was still fresh. These lands had just been opened and the areas were just been opened and they were still in a position of war. War was still going on. The Muslimin on one battlefront with the Persians and the Muslimin on another battlefront entering into the lands of Asham and going into the lands of Asham. And during the Khilaf of Umar radiallahu anhu, both of these areas were opened. And both of these areas were conquered by the Muslimin. And when we speak about the infrastructure, we are speaking about the infrastructure after these lands have been opened. Inshallah, in the lessons to come, we'll mention in detail how these lands were opened and the armies and who was sent out and who took lead and who opened the Al-Mada'in, in the battle of Al-Qadisiyah, the different battles of the opening of Asham. All of these will be mentioned by themselves. The infrastructure is what Umar radiallahu anhu he did with regards to the establishment of the different cities around the Islamic State and around the Muslim lands, and how he took care, the advancement. The first thing that we speak about is the expansion of the mosque of the Prophet ﷺ. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was a number of Muslimin, the Sahaba were there, the people of Medina were there. With the expansion, the numbers are getting bigger, the mosque no longer can handle the amount of people who are coming to attend the Salat in the Masjid al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So Umar radiallahu anhu, from the first things he did, and he was the first one who expanded the Masjid al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He was the first one to expand Masjid al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He bought the house of Al-Abbas that was connected to the Masjid and he made it part of the Masjid. The expansion was 10 cubits towards the Qibla, it was expanded, 20 towards the west, away from the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, because you can't expand it that way, away from the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, and then 70 cubits to the north, which is backwards. Because Medina is situated, where Medina is situated, the Kaaba is in which direction? The Kaaba to Medina is situated or is directed towards the south. Directed towards the south. So the north, 70 cubic meters, it was expanded at the time of the Prophet ﷺ to the time of Umar. And it was rebuilt on bricks. It was rebuilt on bricks. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was made of what? Clay, mud. They used to put the mud together and they'd make the wall. They have a simple structure inside it, wood and things like that, and then they'll make it out of mud. And the roof was out of palm leaves. The roof of it was made out of palm leaves just to protect from the sun and from some of the rain if it was to rain. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he rebuilt it with bricks, and he made the pillars of the masjid from large stems of wood. And he made the construction of the masjid, he made it strong. And he firmly built the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he forbade any types of adornment. No adornment, no fixing up, no zina, no colorful things in the masjid. And this is one of the signs, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions, the signs of the Day of Judgment, when people start to compete with one another, who can adorn the masjid more, who can make the masjid look more. People these days, if you go to places like Dubai and these areas, there's the masjid in Dubai. It's more like a tourist attraction than it is a masjid. You walk in there, you feel you feel like you have to walk in a certain way. You get scared of wrecking something or walking on something. That's how. And then you look at the amount of the musallin who go there and how big the masjid is, it's nothing. And the masajid, the places of prayer are built for ibadah. That's why it's called al-jami'. Al-jami' is the place that gathers the people together, that brings the people together for the ibadah. The masjid that is built and is run down, or that is built so nice and so beautiful, but the people who attend it are few in number, then the reason or the purpose of the masjid is not being fulfilled. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he forbade any type of adornment, any type of fixing. No yellow here, red here. That's what was known at their time. No adornment whatsoever. The masjid is a place to come and to pray. The floor was dirt, he leveled it out with pebbles to make it easier to walk on, make it easier to clean, but that was it. Leveled the ground out, put the walls, structure firm, and that's it, khalas. This is the masjid. This is where the masjid, that's why the person who enters into a masjid, you find that you have the most khushu' in the simple masjid. In the masjid, that there's no distractions around, that there's no colors, blue and light colors and everything around. And no, the masjid that you have khushu' in is the masjid that is simple, that there's not that much things to catch the eye. Because one of the distractions that distract the person from the salat is visual distractions. Visual distractions. That's why you see majority of people today, when they pray, they're praying and the eyes are closed. Why? Because they don't want to look, they don't want to get distracted. And it's makruh. It's makruh to close the eyes during prayer. It's makruh to close the eyes during prayer, unless the person is doing it for an amount of time to relieve himself from the distraction that he has, or from the waswasa, or from the distractions of the shaitan. But the majority of people, that's why in salat, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught us, and the ulama have mentioned in salat, the person, he looks at the position of sujood and that's it. Looks at the position of sujood, focuses the eyesight and just looks there. Doesn't look around, So he made sure that there was no adornment, nothing in the masjid that distracts the people. In the Masjid al-Haram, that was the altercations, and that was the advance, or that was the expansion that was done in Masjid al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That was the expansion that was done. In Masjid al-Haram, there were simple alterations that were made. The first thing that is known that Umar he did, he moved Maqam Ibrahim from the position that it was in. Maqam Ibrahim was attached to the Kaaba. Was attached to the Kaaba. At the time of Umar, he moved it to its position today. He moved it back and he put a casing on it, a cover on it. Why did Umar radiallahu anhu move it back? Because as you know, at the end of the 7 tawaf that you do around the Kaaba, whether it's tawaf sunnah, or it's tawaf of Umrah, or it's tawaf during Hajj, when you finish the 7 tawaf, it's sunnah to pray 2 rak'at behind Maqam Ibrahim. Behind Maqam Ibrahim, وَاتَّخِذُوا مِن مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مُصَلَّى, and take from the Maqam of Ibrahim a musalla, a place of prayer. So the people, as you know, the people, they hear to pray behind Maqam Ibrahim. The person wants to go. Even today, if you go to the Haram during Umrah, sometimes during Hajj, in the busy times, you find people, they're praying right there, right behind Maqam Ibrahim. Right behind, and if a person sees you, one of the mutawwi'in, he sees you, the person, he doesn't care if you're praying, you're in sujood, you're crying, he'll grab you and he'll throw you back. They don't care. It's a danger, it's a hazard. It's a hazard. So they moved Umar radiallahu anhu, when he saw this happening at his time, imagine, at his time, he moved it back so that the people pray behind and there's an area for the person to circulate. Today when you go to the Haram, the whole Sahan, the whole area there is packed. So when you go and you pray, Nabi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, pray behind it. Doesn't mean you have to pray right behind it. Any area that is behind the maqam is considered to be from behind the maqam. You don't have to pray directly behind. So he moved it from the position that it is to where it is now, and they put a cabinet around it. He purchased, radiallahu anhu, all the houses that were surrounded around the Haram. He purchased all the houses that were there from Bayt Mal al-Muslimin, from the treasury of the Muslimin. He bought all the houses, demolished them, and expanded the Haram. The Haram before that was very small. Because before the Prophet ﷺ, in Jahiliyyah, the Haram wasn't really utilized the way it should have been utilized. Like the Muslimin, they utilize it. And today when you go to the Haram, any time during the year, you go to the Haram, it's busy. People are there, as long as the borders are open, as long as they allow you to enter into Saudi, because nowadays you need a visa to travel to your own Muslim lands, you need these things. Wallah al-musta'an. They've put borders up and they've put all of these things. But if you go during the times that the visas are open, it's always busy, mashallah. It's always busy. That's why Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he told Ibrahim, he's in the middle of the desert, in the middle of a valley, wadin ghayri dhi zar'in, no plantation, nothing there, no water, zamzam only, no other thing, no living. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he told him to build the Kaaba there. Out of all places, build the Kaaba in that valley, O Ibrahim. And then when he completed, when it was finished, to call out to the people to come and to perform Hajj. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's looking around, who am I going to call to? He says, you call. You make the call and we'll bring the people. You make the call and we'll bring the people. And from that time till now, the people, year after year, month after month, attend and go to Al-Masjid al-Haram, go to the Kaaba and circumambulate around the Kaaba, do tawaf around the Kaaba. So he extended, he bought all the houses around and he extended, he demolished and he extended. The ones who didn't want to sell, he took it, he demolished and he gave them the money. You can't, this is the Khalifa. This is the extension, that's it. It has to be done. It has to be done. And then he gave them the money for it. And then around the Haram, he built low walls. Low walls were built around it, not higher than the person's body. And on those were placed the lamps that were used at that time with fire, the fire lamps that were placed, they were placed on those walls to keep it lighted, to keep it up during the times of the night times. During Jahiliyyah, the cover of the Kaaba, the kiswa of the Kaaba during the times of Jahiliyyah was made out of leather, was made out of animals' skin. After they cleanse it, they purify it, they put it in the sun, whether using salt, using acid, they cleanse it, dibagh, they cleanse it, and they used to make the kiswa out of it. They used to make the kiswa, the covering of the Kaaba, out of it. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he covered it with Yemeni cloth. With a cloth, it was famous, they used to bring from Yemen, he covered it with a Yemeni cloth. At the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, he covered it with a cloth which is called al-qibati, which used to come from Egypt, a white Egyptian cloth. So he changed the kiswa of the Kaaba as well. And this was, in the Haramain, this was the alterations that were made by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. During the time between Mecca and Medina, these are the two main cities in the Arabian Peninsula. During that time, Umar radiallahu anhu, after focusing on the expansion of Al-Haram al-Makki, the expansion of Al-Haram al-Madani, mosques were built around the Islamic states. And when we say al-Masjid, there's something which is called al-Masjid and there's something which is called al-Jami'. Al-Masjid is a mosque of praying where the people pray. Al-Jami' is where the people gather together for Jum'ah. It's called al-Masjid al-Jami'. In the history of Islam, throughout the areas or the different cities, there used to be a lot of masajid, a lot of musallayat, for instance, where the people they pray, they get together, they pray jama'ah. And there would be one Masjid al-Jami', it's called. Masjid al-Jami', when the day of Jum'ah, the day of Friday, when the khutbah is on, all the other small masajid close, and only Masjid al-Jami' is running. And the Khalifa or the governor of the area, he is the one who performs the khutbah. He is the one who gives the sermon. He is the one who gives the speech. Yani when Umar radiallahu anhu, when he sent Abu Musa al-Ash'ari to Al-Kufa, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari in his job description as being a governor is to lead the prayers, the 5 daily prayers, especially the out loud prayers. To pray the Friday and give the sermon, the khutbah of Friday. To lead the prayers in Eid. To lead the prayers in Eid. And to govern the matters and the issues of the Muslimin. So it was the governor, he was the one who would perform the sermon. So they'd build al-Masjid al-Jami'. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, the great Sahabi, one of the 10 Mubashirin bil Jannah radiallahu anhu, he established the mosque in Al-Kufa. He was the one who established the mosque in Al-Kufa. Utbah bin Ghazwan radiallahu anhu, also one of the old Sahaba, in Al-Basra. He established the masjid there. And Amr ibn al-As in Al-Fustat. Al-Fustat is in Egypt, yani around Al-Iskandariya, around Alexandria, and an area called Al-Fustat. So the major masajid were built. And these were places where, as we'll come to see, they were built from the ground. Yani Al-Basra at that time was nothing. Kufa at that time was nothing. Al-Fustat at that time was nothing. Even Baghdad didn't exist back then. There was no such thing as Baghdad. These were cities that were established and built by the Muslimin. And the Muslimin built them. And Baghdad, later on Baghdad came to be known as the center of the dunya. Baghdad. The center of the dunya back then was Baghdad. Baghdad was the place to be. Look at it now. Look where Baghdad is now. Now we mentioned last week that the man asked one of the mashayikh just recently overseas, he was asking about a money situation in Baghdad and how to do. And he says, this is what we have reached, that the position or the situation of the people of Baghdad is such and such. Where Baghdad used to be the center of the dunya for the Muslimin. The center of the dunya for the Muslimin. How long did it take for it to collapse? 3 weeks. 3 weeks it was gone. 3 weeks it was taken away and run down. That's it, khalas. Look at it now. Now, that's why the Muslimin, when the Muslimin entered into lands, they never entered into the lands and destruction. Look at the last sermon of the Prophet ﷺ. Even a tree, imagine. A tree is to not be taken out of its place. Don't destroy a tree. Don't destroy the infrastructure. Don't destroy kada. Look at Syria. Look at Al-Ghuta. Look at Hims. Wallahi, if you had been to Hims before the fighting happened in Syria, it was one of the most beautiful places to go to. The structure, the city, the streets, the kada. Go look at it now, it's all gone. Look at Al-Ghuta, just outside Dimashq, it's gone. The Al-Ghuta in Dimashq is known to be one of the most beautiful, naturally beautiful places. The scenery there, the greenery, it's all gone now. Demolished. Why? Because that is the way that these people they fight. Just let everything crumble on top of them. And then we'll leave it. No, the Muslimin, when they entered, they established, they built, they advanced, they gave to the people, they helped the people. So these were some of the masajid that were built. The roads and means of transportation by land and sea. During the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, he allocated a share of the Bayt Mal al-Muslimin, the public funds of the Muslimin, to strengthen the communications between the different regions in Islam. Because at that time, a person is only as strong as his ability to communicate with the different regions, with the different areas. There was no such thing as emails, as calling, as sending. No, it was all handwritten and was all sent by horse. So the quicker you are able to get your horse from one place to another, the messenger from one place to another, the more you have facilitated the grounds for this, for the messenger to travel between one area and another, the more quicker your news will reach you. And as we mentioned before, even during the time of Abu Bakr, it was very quick. Between the different, the wars of Al-Ridda were happening towards the south of Medina, over 1,000, nearly 2,000 kilometers away, and the news was going back and forward, never, non-stop, going back and forward. Abu Bakr he knows what's going on day by day. Day by day he knows what's going on, and this is how they kept communication with each other. So this needed to be facilitated, and Umar radiallahu anhu, he set aside a large amount of camels, a very large amount of camels that would travel between Mecca and Medina and between the different regions. Constantly. It's like today. You have the bus route. It goes around. Khalas, it's constant, never stops. Imagine today, and that's what, when it does happen, you find that everything is on hold. If the trains stop, if the buses stop, if everything stops, everything goes on hold. Why? Because there's no means of transportation. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he had set a large amount of camels to travel between the different areas, between Mecca and Medina. Whoever needs to travel, jump on the camels, yalla go. Not only that, between the different areas, Umar radiallahu anhu, he established a place that was called Darul Daqiq. Darul Daqiq is the house of flour. The house of flour. In these houses, between Mecca and Medina, there would be 2, 3, 4 different places that have food and nourishment in them. And this was free. This was free. Even the camels, traveling on the camels was for free. You didn't have to pay anything. It's just a means of easing transportation between the different cities. And these houses, these hostels you can call, during the night there's a place to sleep, a place to lay down, safe, secure. The last thing or the most, highway robbers or being in places that there's no security, there's no protection. No, these are places that were established, and the people, there was sawiq, dates, raisins, water around, and he allowed the people who lived around those areas to establish these things, but on the condition that the water and the food is between everyone. That's why one of the things that the person, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that the people are shuraka in certain things. The people are partners in certain. One of those things is water. You can't just take the water. You have a spring, for instance. You can't just take the water and direct it all towards your land and towards your field. No, people are partners in this. You can't just stop it from going to everyone. No, people are partners in this. And the wayfarers and the strangers, they would use this, and it was free of charge, no charge on the people whatsoever. On the road between Mecca and Medina. Even to the extent where the opened areas that Umar radiallahu anhu, he had opened, he would send treaties. He would make treaties with them that from the conditions in the treaty with us and the jizya, paying the jizya and all of this, that the roads and that be repaired and established and made sure that these roads are not closed. These roads are not closed. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he put a great deal of importance on establishing the infrastructure of the different lands of the Muslimin. Because this is very important, and they always looked forward. They always looked forward. Yani you can't build, and this is something that we learn, anyone who travels a lot here in Sydney, especially on the freeways and on, you always have to build looking at 100 even more years forward. You never build for the day that you're in for today. You never build for today. When it comes to public transport or public places that are used by everyone, you have to look forward. That's why Umar radiallahu anhu, he built these places and he established these places looking to 100 years ahead. 100 years ahead. That's why the roads were built knowing that the Muslimin, especially at his time, when the openings, knowing that the Muslimin at his time is going to double, triple, quadruple, 10 times more. And it's just coming in, and he has the Qur'an. وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا. Waves of people coming in, and this continued. This continued throughout the Khilafah. So the establishment was what was done, and the infrastructure was built to last. And to last for years to come ahead. And then it could be advanced and it could be expanded upon. One of the waterways that ran between the Nile River in a place near a fortress in Babylon, in the Red Sea, was blocked and was neglected by the Byzantines. They had left it. They had no business traveling from Nile, from Egypt to Al-Hijaz, so they neglected it, they left it. Umar radiallahu anhu, he ordered the governors to reopen it, to establish, because this was a pathway from the Mediterranean Sea into Egypt, from Egypt into the Red Sea, into Al-Hijaz. And this was a transport, or this was a way to travel between, or a waterway to travel from one side to the other side. Yani Umar radiallahu anhu, his vision was forward. His vision was ahead. Not that, okay, this year we're not going to use it, so I'll leave it. No. We're going to need it, we're going to come in need of it. And that's where the Muslimin, if you really look at it, that's where the Muslimin have gone behind. That's where the Muslimin have. Now we spoke about the adornment of places, and come to speak about even the cities. The adornment and how the people, Umar radiallahu anhu, he made sure that the people don't go in or deeply lavish themselves in the way of living, in the way of construction, in the building, to make sure that, okay, you build what you need to the extent that you need, in the places that you need, and to the extent that you need, but you don't go beyond. You don't go beyond that. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he made sure that all of these areas were open, and he opened this waterway between Egypt all the way to Al-Hijaz. All the way to Al-Hijaz. He established border posts and new cities. From the new cities, as the conquest spread further in the lands of the Muslimin, Umar began to build cities on the borders. And began to build cities, move forward. Once you move forward, you build a line of defense. These areas were known as thughur. Thughur are the places in which the army stays. And then behind that, you usually have cities that used to be built. The cities that Umar built, there were no non-existent. Basra, Al-Kufa, Al-Fustat, Al-Mosul, Al-Jiza, Sirt in Libya, the city of Sirt. All of these areas were built new. And from the main areas, or we'll speak about two, Al-Basra and Al-Kufa. Because these were, in the future or throughout the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, the reason why, and Al-Fustat, in Iraq and in Egypt. In Asham, everything was already established. In Asham and in Syria, that was the center of the Byzantines at that time, and that was already built. Everything was built, the castles, the houses, everything was there. Basra, Al-Kufa, and Al-Fustat, they were built from the ground up. They were built from the ground up. Al-Basra wal-Kufa, they are both in Iraq. Some of them are closer towards the borders of the Arabian Peninsula. Yani Al-Basra, if you look at Al-Basra and this area, it's close to the south, or it's in the south of Al-Iraq. It's in the south of Al-Iraq. Al-Mosul is more inwards. Al-Mosul is more inwards. These two areas were established after the opening of Iraq happened. After the opening of Iraq happened. Al-Basra is located between two of the most famous rivers in that area, Dajla al-Furat. Dajla al-Furat are two main rivers, and Dajla al-Furat are mentioned in the Sunnah of Prophet ﷺ when the ones that will dry up and the gold will appear. These are in Iraq, in the south of Iraq, at a meeting point between the two rivers, which is called Shattul Arab. Which is called Shattul Arab. This area here was later established and made as Al-Basra. And Utbah bin Ghazwan, the Sahabi who was there, Utbah bin Ghazwan, he sends, after Umar radiallahu anhu, he says, search for a place, an area to establish a city. After the Muslimin are moving forward, you need to establish a city, a point for the army, and a point of where the armies gather together, and where there is a governor, because Medina is too far. So you need a governor who is there to move forward. To move forward. So he said, I have found a place. He sent to Umar radiallahu anhu. He said, I have found a land that is between cultivated land and wilderness. Between cultivated land and wilderness. With ponds and reeds nearby. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he wrote back, he said, this is where you settle. Establish this area here that was already known as Al-Basra, but it was built from there. The first thing that Utbah bin Ghazwan he built was the masjid. The first thing he built was the masjid. And the governor's house was built across the road from the masjid. And if the door of the masjid is here, across the road directly is the door of the governor. Is the door of the governor. You can't run away. You're in front of the masjid, you're there. And one of the things that Umar radiallahu anhu, news came that one of the wulat of Al-Kufa had closed his doors. Because you have the garden which has doors to it, gates to it, and then you have the house behind it. It reached news that one of them had closed the gates during the day and wasn't opening the gates during the day. So he straight away sent a letter. He says, these doors never close. The doors of the governor never close. You never know when someone is in need of something, and then he comes and he finds the doors of the governor or the doors of the wali of that area, they find it closed. He said, no one closed their doors, no one allowed their doors to be closed. He built the mosque. First the mosque was built out of reeds, and the governor's house was also built near it out of the same thing, which is al-qasab, which is something that they could construct, bamboos like, they would construct it, and then when they would leave the houses, the armies when they were there, they would construct their houses. And then when they would go out for jihad, they'll pull them apart and put them aside. And then when they would come back, they would construct them. So it was an area that began like that. And then when the armies of the Muslimin went forward, and they would come back, and then they would go, once they went and they left the piles there, and it all caught fire. So Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, at his time when he became governor, they requested that the house be built now out of clay, and out of stones and out of rocks and all of these things to protect it, and the permission was given during the time of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiyallahu anhu, and that began the establishment of Al-Basra that later on would become one of the centers of knowledge of the Islamic lands. Al-Basra later on would become one of the centers of the Islamic knowledge. Right after it was Al-Kufa. The historians agree that Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, he was the one who established Al-Kufa, and he was the one who founded the city. He was the one who built the masjid, built the area. They were the ones who planned out to the extent where they made sure that the roads in the main street were such and such a length, were wider, and then the normal streets were such and such, and then the alleyways were at a such and such amount or such and such width. And Al-Kufa later on became the center of knowledge in Iraq. The great Imam, Al-Imam Al-A'zam, Abu Hanif al-Nu'man radiyallahu anhu, was centered in Al-Kufa. And Abdullah bin Mas'ud, the great Sahabi, the famous Sahabi, was centered in Al-Kufa. And this became later on one of the famous and known areas that were established in the time of, or during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. Al-Fustat is in Egypt. Al-Fustat is an area that is near Alexandria. Alexandria, Alexandria in Egypt is towards the north of Egypt. And it was an already established city. They say that the establishment of Alexandria goes back to before Dhul Qarnayn. They say that the name of Dhul Qarnayn is Iskandar. The ulama say that the correct name of Dhul Qarnayn is Iskandar. And then the city there was called Al-Iskandariya. The city there was called Al-Iskandariya. So it was an old city. Between Al-Iskandariya and Mecca and Medina, or between Medina, there was a place, or there was a waterway. Umar radiallahu anhu, he made sure that there was nothing, no barriers, nothing in between Medina and the cities that he established. And no sea, no mountains, nothing that could slow down the communication between the different cities. So when in Iskandariya there was a water barrier between them, he said, don't stay or don't build Iskandariya. Don't take that as your center, move around and use Al-Fustat. And then Al-Fustat became the center that Amr ibn al-As, he had established. In Al-Iskandariya, in Alexandria, there's a famous mosque there, Masjid Amr ibn al-As. That's the famous masjid in Al-Iskandariya. Because Amr ibn al-As, he was the one who opened Egypt, as we'll come to know in the conquerings. And then he moved to Al-Fustat. He built the masjid there, which was also known now as Masjid Amr ibn al-As. And he built the governor's house, and he built a house for Umar ibn al-Khattab. He built a very big house for him. He said, take it down, make it a souq. He said, out of all people, the person imagines, out of all people, you are building this mansion for Umar. Umar, he straight away told him, take it, make it a souq for the Muslimin. There's no need for me to this. And imagine a man who's coming to Jerusalem, to Bayt al-Maqdis, and he's opening Bayt al-Maqdis, and he's entering into there, and he's wearing a jubba, a cloak, with 12 patches in it, 12 holes in it, with patches on it. And then when they tell him, oh, Umar, fix yourself up, wear something new, kada, as soon as he put on something new, he walked, he stopped, he took it off. He says, I can't wear it. I'm not going to wear this just to show the honor to the people. نحن قوم, and this is one of the times where he said his famous phrase, as the historians they say, نحن قوم أعزنا الله بالإسلام. We are people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He honored us through our following of Islam. وَمَهْمَا ابْتَغَيْنَا الْعِزَّةَ بِغَيْرِهِ أَذَلَّنَا اللَّهِ. And if we try to establish honor, and this is, just look at the state of the Muslimin today, or the leaders of the Muslimin today, so-called leaders of the Muslimin today who control or who run the Muslim lands. And as long as we try to establish our honor through means other than Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will disgrace us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will disgrace us. In another hadith, the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, إذا تدايعتم أو إذا تبايعتم إذا رضيتم بالزرع إذا رضيتم بالزرع. If you are pleased with your farming, with your agriculture, وتبايعتم بالعينة, and you begin to sell and buy and purchase between each other with a transaction which is called al-'ina, which is forbidden. وَلَحِقْتُمْ أَذْنَابَ الْبَقَرِ, and you chase the tails of the cows, and you are happy with وَرَضِيتُمْ, and you are happy with what you are getting. You are happy following the dunya. وَتَرَكْتُمُ الْجِهَادِ, and you leave jihad, and you close the door of jihad, fighting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أذلنا الله أذلكم الله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will disgrace you, and it will not be lifted. ولا يرفعه عنكم حتى ترجعوا إلى دينكم, and it will not be lifted off until you return to your deen. Until you return to your deen. That's why from the ad'iyah, Allahumma ruddana ila dinika raddan jamila. Oh Allah, bring us back to your deen a beautiful way, in a beautiful way. So these areas, Umar radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu always made sure that the only means of seeking honor in the land and between the people was through Islam. Was through Islam. And any means other than that, if the person tries to reach izzah, it's going to be disgrace. It's going to be disgrace. And you will not be able to move forward in any way or any means. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he established these main cities that were around, and they were built from the ground up. The masajid, the aswaq, the marketplace, the houses, all of these things were built from ground up. During the Khilafah of Ali radiallahu anhu, during Umar, Abu Bakr, the center of Khilafah was Medina. Umar, the center of Khilafah was Medina. Uthman, the center of Khilafah was Medina. And until that time, Medina was a secure, safe place. And as we know, at the time of Uthman, Uthman was assassinated, killed in his own home, in Medina. In Medina. And Medina was taken siege. And Medina was taken over. And Uthman, he didn't want any bloodshed, so he told the Sahaba to put their swords down. After this happened, and after bloodshed took place in Medina, Ali radiallahu anhu, he later on moved the Khilafah where? He moved the Khilafah from Medina to Al-Kufa. And Al-Kufa, the city that was established during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab by Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, became the center of the Khilafah. To move the fitna, to move this away from Al-Madinah. To move the fighting, to move all of this away from Medina. During the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, as we said, Ash-Sham was already established. Ash-Sham was a city that was from the most beautiful of cities, to the extent where Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu, the famous Sahabi, Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu, when he went to Ash-Sham, to Dimashq, and the governor of Ash-Sham was Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan radiallahu anhu. And he remained the governor of Sham, and then he put the Khilafah in Ash-Sham later, or after Al-Kufa was centered in Ash-Sham. Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu, Muawiyah, during the time of Uthman, he sends a message to Uthman. He says, "Oh Uthman, come deal with Abu Dharr. Come deal with Abu Dharr. He's making a lot of trouble for us. He wants us all to leave the houses that we live in. He wants us all to give up all our wealth that we have." Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu was a man on his own. His ideology or his way of life, not everyone could live it. To him, to Abu Dharr, you have $100 today, you need $20 to live that day, $80 you give it away. And the next day the same. That's how Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu, that's how he lived. And he used to call to that. When he entered into Ash-Sham and he saw the houses, the greenery, the fruits, the rooms, the houses made out of stonery and out of all of these things, and he looked, and this is too much. This is too much. And he started to call the people to leave it. So Muawiyah, he sends to Uthman, he says, "Uthman, come take care of him, do something. He's ruining it for us." So Uthman, he sends to Abu Dharr, he says, "Oh Abu Dharr, if you want to remain in Ash-Sham, you can remain in Ash-Sham. But the opinions that you have, you can call to them, but you keep them to yourself. You don't force the people to follow your way of life. Or you can come to Medina, and Medina is open for you any day. Or you can live on the outskirts of Medina, you can live wherever you want." So Abu Dharr, what did he do? Abu Dharr, he moved and he lived on the outskirts of Medina. He said, "Khalas, I'm going to live here by myself." And this was making the prophecy of Muhammad as if making it true. Because Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa in the battle of Tabuk, Jaysh al-Usra, when they had left, Abu Dharr was behind them. So when Abu Dharr, he caught up with them, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa he said, what did he say about Abu Dharr? He says, "This is Abu Dharr. He will live alone. He will die alone, and he will be resurrected alone." So he lived alone on the outskirts of Medina. He died alone. He died alone. When he died, he told his wife, "Take me out on the road, and the first caravan to go past, tell them that my name is Abu Dharr, to wash me, to bury me, to pray on me." And then when he died, radiallahu, she took him outside, and the first caravan to drive past or to ride past, who was in it? Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. He says, as soon as I saw Abu Dhar, I began to cry. And I said, Sadaqa Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That Abu Dhar is a man who will live alone, he will die alone, and he will be resurrected on his own. So he went down, he washed him, he put him in his kafan, and he buried him and he prayed on him. And he's buried outside on the outskirts of Medina radiallahu anhu. So Ash-Sham was already established. Ash-Sham was a country or was a land that was built. And was built hundreds, thousands of years before the Muslimin entered. The Muslimin continued to live in there, and altercations and masajid were built in there in Ash-Sham. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reopened it for the Muslimin as it was opened at the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. And this was a glance into the infrastructure of the lands at the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, and it just gives you an idea. And when you look in detail in how the infrastructure and everything was changed and built, you see how advanced the minds of the Muslimin were, how advanced they were. And the people, they look, you live in Baghdad. At that time, there was no one as advanced as the Muslimin. When it came to everything, finances, infrastructure, roads, buildings, armies, teaching, everything. And the Muslimin, they reached the highest level. Why? Because the deen teaches you that the Muslimin, they are the ones who are advanced. People think, unfortunately, that the person has to be, if the person's religious or if the person follows his deen, and the person does what he needs to do as a Muslim, he prays his 5 daily prayers, he does what he has to do, that he can't be someone who is a professor, or someone who is a surgeon, or a doctor, or someone who is an engineer, or someone, it's got nothing to do. If anything, the scholars of the past, one example, Al-Imam Ibn Rushd Al-Hafid, the grandson of Ibn Rushd. Ibn Rushd Al-Hafid, he was the top scholar of his time. He was also the top doctor of his time and surgeon. And he was a scholar of maths. He was a scholar of the astronomy. He was a alim in distance, in masafa. And he was a alim in sharia. People used to come to him, he would give his lessons, his classes in sharia, and then he would open, he was a doctor. People would come to him and seek help from him. People think that the Muslimin, that's all they have. No salat and this and that. No, the Muslimin, they were advanced in everything. In construction, in sciences, in chemistry, physics, biology, everything. The Muslimin were the first in every single thing. The ulama, they say, the non-Muslims, they say, and I always mention this, and there's a bit of exaggeration in it, but it gives you a picture of what happened. Al-Andalus, when Al-Andalus was gone, the Muslimin no longer lived there. They say that Al-Andalus at that time, it went back hundreds of years. When the Muslimin left, the advancement of it went back hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. Why? Because the Muslimin were there. The kings of those areas in Europe, even though they were at war with the Muslimin, there are letters that are preserved in history that tell us that they used to send their children to the Muslimin to learn. Imagine the king, he sends his daughter, he sends her to the Muslimin to learn. Because he knows that she will be safe there, she will be secure there, and she will be attaining the highest levels of knowledge. He sends her there, and he sends a letter to the Khalifa, to the governor at that time, and please take care of her, and she's sent as a student, kada, and the governor takes care, doesn't wallah take her, and then say no, she's a hostage, kada, no. She comes and she learns. And this was known in the history of the Muslimin, that the people would come to the lands of the Muslimin to see the advancement. And this is the Khulafa, and amongst them Umar radiallahu anhu, he encouraged this. And he said the Muslimin to move forward in this. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam also to teach the Muslimin writing, reading, kada. You look, and it's unfortunate that literature and knowledge, unfortunately, in the lands of Muslims is not given much importance. Because of these reasons, or because of this, and the West, they don't want to see the Muslimin advance. Go and build the tallest building. What's that going to do? Who built it to begin with? The Muslimin built it, يعني? The Muslimin, they engine. The one thing that the Nabi ﷺ, he tells you not to do, they go and they do it. And to show that we are advanced and we are كذا. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وترى الحفاة العراة يتطاولون في البنيان. And he didn't put anything forward, and he didn't advance the Muslimin in any way. That's why Umar ibn al-Khattab, when it came to the infrastructure, the first thing that was on his mind is, how is this going to benefit the Muslimin? How is this going to benefit the Khilafah, the lands of the Muslimin? Because I'm going to die. And he knows this. He knows that my time is going to end, I'm going to die, and the only thing that will live on is my legacy. And the only thing that will live on is that which I benefited the Muslimin. That's why from the three things that is guaranteed 100% that will benefit the person in his grave is what? Sadaqah jariyah. Something you put forward and the Muslimin are benefiting from it. Now you have areas, lands, wells, trees that have been sadaqah jariyah from over 1,400 years ago. Been waqf for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They've left for Allah, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From then until now, every single time something is benefited from it, the person in the grave is attaining the reward. That's where their sight was. That's where their look was. Beyond just building this dunya. And that's why Umar radiallahu anhu, when it came to these matters, he was very strict. He didn't want the people to dwell and put extra effort into building this dunya, because the minute you begin, khalas, the focus is set on that. And the money is put in, and the time and the effort and kada, and then by the time you know it, Allahu A'lam, only a few are the ones who are able to pick themselves up after it. So the focus of Umar radiallahu anhu was to get the people to focus on building the akhirah rather than building this dunya, because the akhirah is that which will last forever, and the dunya is that which, as we all know, and we sometimes try to forget or get ourselves to forget, or don't think, no, khalas, it's not going to happen, but it's all going to come to an end. That's why the ulama, they say, لو دامت لغيرك ما وصلت إليك. If the kingship and the position had lasted for those who were before you, then it would never have reached you. It would have never reached you. Kingship, position, everything. لو دامت لغيرك ما وصلت إليك. If it was kept in the hands of those before you, it would have never reached you. But it doesn't. Dual, it changes, moves around. From this person to that person, from this person to that person, deceiving this person, deceiving that person. Looking at this person, that's why the difference, and I'll end on this inshallah, the difference between, it's not a matter of just saying I'm not going to have anything in the dunya. We're not saying to go and to live like they used to live at the days of the Prophet ﷺ in bamboo houses with clay and kada. You go and you do that, you're crazy. You go and try and build a house in the middle of Greenacre, in the middle of Bankstown, sit there and build it with clay and put the palm leaves on the roof and kada. It's unrealistic. But that's not the issue, that's not the matter. The matter is, have what you want to have from the dunya, that's fine. In halal means. Just don't allow that dunya to run your life. Don't allow that dunya to be that which directs you in this dunya. That because of that, I'm going this way. No, you take control of it. You direct it how you want to. That's why one of the mashayikh, one of the scholars, he says, the difference between us and the Sahaba is that the Sahaba had the deen on their head and the dunya in their hands. As soon as the deen shakes, they leave the dunya and they grab the deen. We're the other way around. We have the dunya on our head and the deen in our hands. We have the deen, it's there, it's apparent. You can see it sometimes, but it's in the hands. If the dunya shakes, the bank account goes below $1,000, goes below $500, the deen is left, and straight away to hold the dunya, to protect and preserve the dunya. And this is where we've gone lost. This is where we have lost the vision. Lost the vision. It's not about not having the dunya, it's about not letting that dunya to control you. to control your ways of life, to control your means, whether I go here, not go here, whether I attend or not attend, kada. No. You control the dunya, you can have as much as you want. Uthman radiallahu anhu, his horses used to be heard thousands and kilometers outside of Medina. His horses used to feel them when they would run, you'd feel them in Medina. He was rich, but he never allowed the dunya that he had to control him and to control his deen, or to control that to do. That's why Uthman radiallahu anhu, he was one of the ones that were written in history who stayed up the whole night, recited the whole Qur'an in one rak'ah. One rak'ah, the whole Qur'an. The whole Qur'an in one rak'ah. This is someone who, he had the dunya in front of him. He had everything in front of him. That which we think we have today, the rich person that he thinks he has today, comes nothing close to the riches of Uthman. But he was able to pray the whole night in one rak'ah, reciting the whole Qur'an. Barakah. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is because he didn't allow that dunya to take control of what he does. And this is how it is. This is the difference between the two. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. And this is something that Umar radiallahu anhu, he established. Because when you're building, when you're coming up, the first thing you want to do is to control the people who are there, to not allow them to move or to get too ahead of themselves. And this is what Umar radiallahu anhu, this is what he did, and this is what he mastered, and he made sure that it was done in the best of ways. And inshallah ta'ala, we'll continue with the khilaf of Umar radiallahu anhu next week. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Every Muslim dreams to be up in Jannah, 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 Jannah. A pious person's destiny. Inshallah in Jannah, 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 Jannah.